Ben's heart was still racing as he stood there, staring at the cracked mirror. He swore he had seen something behind him, some faint, shadowy figure. But now the room was still, save for the soft whisper of the wind sneaking in through a cracked window. He rubbed his eyes and took a deep breath, trying to calm the rising unease in his chest. "Ben?" Matt's voice echoed from the hallway again, breaking the heavy silence. Ben blinked, still facing the mirror, then turned quickly on his heel. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. He took one last glance at the mirror, half expecting the shadow to return, but it didn't. Just his own reflection stared back, distorted and faint. Stepping out into the hallway, he found Matt and Paul standing near the staircase, their faces illuminated by the dim beams of their flashlights. The rest of the house loomed around them, dark and oppressive, the air thick with the weight of time and neglect. "You find anything?" Matt asked, his voice hushed as though speaking too loudly might disturb whatever ghosts lay dormant in the mansion. "Just an old mirror. Creepy as hell, but nothing significant. I don't know why I'm even surprised at this point. Every house Matt drags us to has some weird, creepy thing in it," Ben replied. "Last time it was the abandoned church with the weird chanting." Matt grinned, though there was an edge of tension in his eyes that wasn't there before. The chanting turned out to be a recording, remember? The priest had set it up to scare off vandals. Besides, we haven't even explored the whole place yet. Ben glanced down the hallway, the darkness seeming to stretch on forever. Something about this place was different. There was a heaviness in the air, a sense that something more than just time and decay lingered within the mansion's walls. "What's next?" Paul asked, looking worried. "We keep exploring. Mrs. Lancaster said the really strange stuff happens upstairs, remember? The lights, the figures in the windows. We've barely scratched the surface." Of course she said that. And now, here we are walking straight into whatever weirdness is going on up here. Matt patted Paul on the back. "Where's your sense of adventure?" "I left it at home with my sanity," Paul replied. The three of them moved deeper into the hallway, their flashlights cutting through the thick darkness. The floor creaked beneath their feet with every step, the sound echoing through the empty house. Every so often they'd pass by a room, its door hanging open like a gaping mouth, revealing little more than dust-covered furniture and peeling wallpaper. But something about the atmosphere felt charged, as though the house was watching them, waiting for something to happen. As they reached the far end of the hallway, a faint sound reached their ears. It was soft at first, almost indistinguishable from the creaking of the old mansion, but it grew steadily louder, a rhythmic tapping, tap, 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 coming from somewhere above them. Paul froze in place, his flashlight trembling slightly. "Tell me you guys hear that too?" Ben and Matt exchanged a glance before nodding. "It's probably just the wind," Matt said, though even he sounded uncertain, or maybe a branch hitting a window. "Yeah," Ben said, though his mind was already wandering back to the figure he thought he'd seen in the mirror. "Let's check it out." The sound seemed to be coming from the attic, a rhythmic knocking that echoed through the house. The three of them followed the noise down the hallway, eventually reaching a narrow staircase that led up to the attic. The door at the top of the stairs was half open, swaying slightly with the draft. "Well, that's not ominous at all," Paul muttered, staring up at the dark staircase. "This is where we're supposed to split up and die one by one, right?" Matt gave him a playful shove. "Relax, Paul, it's just an old house, probably squirrels or something," Ben added. "Right," Paul said, his voice dry. "Squirrels that knock on walls." Ben took the lead, his flashlight trained on the stairs as he began to climb. The wooden steps groaned under his weight, each one creaking louder than the last. Behind him, Matt and Paul followed, their footsteps tentative as they ascended into the attic. At the top of the stairs, the attic spread out before them like a dark cavern. The air was thick and musty, the scent of old wood and decaying insulation filling their noses. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling beams, and piles of old furniture and forgotten belongings were scattered haphazardly around the room. In the far corner, a small window let in a sliver of moonlight, casting long shadows across the floor. The tapping noise had stopped the moment they entered the attic, leaving an eerie silence in its place. "Okay, this is officially creepy," Paul whispered, shining his flashlight around the room. Matt, undeterred, stepped further into the attic. "Look at all this stuff," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's got to be something interesting up here." Ben moved slowly through the attic, his eyes scanning the piles of old trunks and discarded furniture. The room felt heavy, like the air was pressing down on him. He could feel the weight of the years in this place, the echoes of lives long forgotten. As his flashlight passed over an old rocking chair, something caught his eye, a flash of movement just at the edge of the beam. He whipped his flashlight back, but there was nothing there, just the rocking chair, swaying gently as if someone had just been sitting in it. "Guys," Ben said, his voice tight, "there's something up here." Matt and Paul turned toward him, their flashlights sweeping the room. "What do you mean something?" Paul asked, his voice edging into panic. "Like a rat? Please tell me it's a rat." "I don't know," Ben said, his pulse quickening. "I thought I saw—" Before he could finish, the tapping noise started up again, louder this time, coming from directly above them. The three of them froze, staring up at the ceiling. The sound was rhythmic, deliberate, as though someone or something was knocking from the other side. "Okay, that's not the wind," Paul whispered, his voice trembling. Matt, ever the skeptic, took a step forward. "There's probably an animal up there, or something loose in the roof." Ben wasn't so sure. The noise didn't sound like something random. It had a pattern to it, a strange, deliberate cadence that sent shivers down his spine. He stared up at the ceiling, his flashlight beam flickering slightly as the tapping continued. Stay tuned. To be continued!